Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted to be broadcasting with you in class today. Brad is engineering the broadcast at GCN in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, it's working great. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. And it's up 24/7. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this evening? Or this morning? It's good to hear you again.
Well, thank you, Guineith. And I want to thank you for keeping that seat warm, as you've been saying, for a couple of weeks. And, you know, I mentioned to the class yesterday that months ago you mentioned that you'd like to have your own radio broadcast. And, of course, I kept that in mind, and as the need arose, I chatted with you and asked you if you'd like to do it, and you jumped right to the occasion. And with virtually no notice, no preparation, not having the connections to chat with the instructors about the broadcast that you were going to be doing, you just jumped right in and did it. Now, I got to tell you that when I reflect on my early days of broadcasting, I was pretty nervous. And to pull that off, as you did, was an amazing feat. Absolutely amazing. A continent, separate continent from everybody that you were broadcasting with, the time delays of communication, because it takes longer for the communication signal to get from Australia, where you are, to the United States. If you put all that in the mix, it's absolutely amazing what you've done. Amazing. So I want to thank you. And I also wanted to ask you, so what was it like? What was it like being an on-your-own broadcaster with no safety net, no training, no notes, just going live and doing it?
Well, it's like this. I've been listening to talk radio for a lot of years. Here in Australia, the whole talk radio industry is almost extinct. But, there's a few broadcasters out there who still have their own shows and, more or less try not to be cowed and just, wear the occasional prison sentence for what they say. I kid you not. This is true. Here in this country, we lock up our talk show hosts, and most of them have been frightened out of existence. But I like those that have survived, literally. We just lost one earlier on this year, and his name was John Clark, and he would have been, maybe in his 60s or 70s. He was a broadcaster from when I was a little girl in New Zealand, actually, and he did acting and he did radio broadcasting, and he did satire and comedy as his form of broadcast. to get his political message through. And unfortunately, he died earlier this year, and I don't quite know how. I don't quite know under what circumstances, but what I do know is it was really, really sudden. And when you get that sort of, sudden departure with somebody who is so controversial, you always sort of go, oh gosh, I wonder what happened there. But there's another fellow, his name is Darren Hinch, and he's an old school, current affairs type radio broadcaster and television broadcaster, and he was of the 60 Minutes variety. Then he got into I don't know what he did first. He was also on talk radio as well. Those two, Darren Hinch quite literally has spent up to 6 months at a stretch in prison for things he said on the radio. I just need for the class to know that when I say I have to be careful what I say here, I'm not kidding. But it's funny, there's a part of it feels like I've been doing this my whole life, and maybe it is a past life thing. Because I know, I think I mentioned with Dr. Norm Shealy in one of my past lives, I was a actress in Dublin at the turn of the 20th century, and that woman was a very, very brave lady. I've actually got a great deal of admiration for her. And she actually did meet my husband when she was very, very old, and when my husband was a teenager, they actually met. My husband went for a holiday to Ireland, and he stayed at her house for a while. And I think that she was quite taken with my husband, although he was a teenager. He would have been about 18 years old. And she would have been, at least in her 70s. She would have probably more likely in her 80s, actually. And she was an actress, and she was actually one of the founders of the Abbey Theatre. Very famous woman in her day. And very, she was on the stage and she absolutely loved it, and she was quite good at it. And funnily enough, she was also, given that context, we've figured out that she was also friends with Pamela Coleman Smith, who was a set designer who also was working in Dublin at the time, and more than likely, my pre-incarnation hired Pamela Coleman Smith to do set designs in the Abbey Theatre. And it's funny because it's likely that I've met that same lady in this life, and we've become quite good friends in the psychic industry. But anyway, that's quite interesting, and it was interesting to discuss that with Dr. Shealy about reincarnation, for example. There wasn't any radio at the time, but I think that if there had been, that she probably would have been on the radio, because she was a very, very interesting and quite flamboyant lady, and she had politics that believed that people should be allowed to have freedom, and But I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did Dr. Shealy think about this? Did he have any comments?
I don't think I went into as much detail with him as what I've just gone into with you, but I think I said that I had a past life in Ireland, and I've been able to research this lady, and I've actually had dreams where I've been this lady walking in Dublin streets, in her eyes and in her body, going to her house. And I'm pretty sure that if I saw her house, I would recognize it immediately. But he said that sort of thing absolutely happens. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's really, really interesting, you know.
Norm Shealy did he mention that he did a past life regression with me?
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I found myself to be a farmer, no one special, just a farmer. And I was in the resistance movement, if you will. And it appeared to be hundreds of years ago. And the other team, the enemy, was burning down village after village after village, and they're getting closer and closer and closer.
Gosh.
And I was trying to warn people. I was trying to warn our village what was coming. I knew it was coming, and I knew there would be death and destruction and the burning of buildings and the carnage that would follow with an invading army. And I couldn't get anybody to join the resistance. It was just, I could talk to them, and they would just turn their backs on me and walk away. And I saw the same thing Friday night, last Friday night, when I ran for the board of directors of the electric cooperative. By the way, to cut to the chase, I placed second out of 3.
Wow!
And of course, it doesn't count. You have to be first.
You didn't win.
Yeah, that means I did not win, and very few people wanted me to win. I would say maybe 15%. And the reason I'm mentioning this, when I said turn their backs, all of the employees were present who are employed by this electric cooperative, and my position was I was going to lower the rates at which we were charged. I wanted the total electric bill to be lowered, depending on how they did it, whether it was by the kilowatt hour or by the fixed meter charge or access fee, whatever you want to call it. I wanted the combination of all that to be lower. Not reduce the rate increases, but lower them.
Oh my!
And I'll tell you what happened. So, Guineith, I was telling you about what happens when people turn their back on you, and I mentioned in this past life regression that Dr. Norm Shealy did with me a couple of years ago, that I was trying to get our village together to resist the carnage that was coming our way. And some people thought, well, if we just hide, it'll be okay, and it'll go away and go past us. And I was trying to explain to them that my take on it was that we were going to be run over and killed, and our farms were going to be taken, and our families were going to be killed and destroyed, and there's no time for that. We have to resist. These guys are invading us. And it could have been the Revolutionary War. It could have been that. I don't know. Or it could have been in the future. I don't know that either. But I do know that I was the member of this resistance, and it looked like I was a member of a team of 1, and that'd be me. And
oh dear.
It's nothing that I haven't seen in the past. I have rallied the troops to fight the enemy when they wanted to put a dump in our county, and everybody was with me, and I turned around after a couple months, and it's just me. When they wanted to put a prison in our little town, I was part of the resistance, and at both cases, I was the point man. And I was not a broadcaster, I was just a farmer. And after a couple months, it was just me. And I'd had it with all these pansies, the neighbors who are, we're behind you, we're 110%. I don't know how you can be 110% of anything. If either you're with them, with the person, or you're not more than 100%, with a person. Well, these people were 110% behind me, and pretty soon it's just me. And they were threatened by the government. They were threatened to lose their bribes that they were taking from the government, or they were contracts, or whatever it was. They weren't willing to give it up for their own freedom, and so it was just me. Well, in this meeting that I was at last Friday night, it was all I could do to get my voice working to be on stage, and they gave me 2 minutes. And in preparation for that, I decided I would say hello to all of the uniformed employees of the electric cooperative, the people who are being paid to do the work for us, the members. And they wore red shirts, like a red collared shirt, short sleeves, and black slacks. That would be men and women. So you could easily spot them. And they had the electric cooperative brand logoed on their shirts. Well, I noticed that some people were friendly to me who were employees, but a lot of them weren't very friendly and turned their back on me, literally. And I was thinking, wow, here's some people that may have to take some high-level direction from whatever I am trying to implement. They ought to at least pay attention to me, and they ought to be darn nice to me because, it's possible that their jobs may depend on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was not the case. So at this facility, which was in Lebanon, Missouri, spelled Lebanon, pronounced Lebanon, the same location where we had our Get Prepared Expo 3 times, 46,000 square foot facility. It would hold 8,000 people. I was told there would be 3,000 there. In actuality, there were 1,005 members, and with the members' guests, it was about 2,500 estimated.
Mm-hmm.
So I was walking around, shaking hands and smiling and saying hello to some of the employees. And I went to say hello to 3 of these guys behind a U-shaped set of tables. And it seemed like they weren't interested in paying attention to me, but their job was to pay attention to anyone who came up to the tables. They were like at a voting location where you turn in your ballots for the election.
Yeah.
So I went up and they kind of ignored me. So I, being me, I said, well, I'll just go behind the tables. And that way they're going to have to say hi to me. So I put out my hand and I said hello, and immediately the person who was assigned to make sure that I and my family were absolutely safe came behind the tables and said, you can't campaign behind the tables. You can't campaign here. I said,
wow.
I'm not campaigning. I'm just introducing myself as a candidate for the board of directors to 3 of the employees. One of the guys who was in the red shirt absolutely refused to face me. I was the biggest thing going on behind the tables, and he refused. I'll tell you more about these guys. Class, Guineith Isaacs is with us. So Guineith, we're talking about me running for the board of directors of this electric cooperative, and there are 35,000 members in this board. I'm sorry, in this cooperative, and it has 9 members of the board of directors, and each one of them runs for re-election every 3 years. So you have a 3-year term, and there are 9 of them. So every year, 3 of them run for re-election. And what I did was, I thought, these guys put advertisements in the newspapers and the media, and they get interviewed in the magazine that comes out once a month for the electric cooperative. And so these guys are in there. There's articles about them, and they get free advertising under the guise of being interviewed for an article, and their pictures and all their accomplishments and whatever. So I had signs made, and they were 18 inches by 24. They were yellow background with black letters, and each one of them had my name at the top in slightly bold letters. It didn't say vote for. It just said Vincent Finelli. And then, there were 5 signs. One of them said Vincent Finelli for lower electric bills. Vincent Finelli, they raised rates 7 times in 14 years.
Oh,
Vincent Finelli, you re-elected rate increases. Vincent Finelli, never re-elect anybody. Vincent Finelli, don't vote until you hear him speak. Now, it may sound self-serving, but what happens, I was there 3 years before, and what happens is people come for their prizes. They gave away free things. The first time I was there 3 years ago, they gave away really nice umbrellas. They're probably Chinese, but, they probably cost $7 a piece. If you bought a lot of them, like 1,000 of them. Well, this time they gave away 2 light bulbs, 2 LED, screw-in light bulbs, A19 bases, the standard Edison type base, a nightlight, an LED nightlight, and a digital thermometer, all packaged in a very expensive box. So everybody gets one of those.
Your temperature up.
Yeah. So it is. So you get your free gift. So people come for their free gift, and they're handed a ballot. Once they register and they're verified that they actually are a member, they get a ballot and they can vote for 3 people. Even though they live in District 1, 2, or 3, they can vote for a candidate in District 1 and in District 2 and in District 3. Now, naturally, my name was the last on the list for District 1. Mm-hmm. And what happens is there's a committee to determine who is going to run against the incumbent, the director who is running for re-election, and all of them keep running for re-election. Each time I've been there, the directors keep running for re-election. So each director picks 2 people to be on this committee to find someone to run against him or her. And so it's kind of a self-serving committee. What director in his right mind or her right mind is going to pick someone who would be a viable candidate, right?
Opponent. Yeah.
Right. So what happens is the incumbent, the guy running for re-election, always wins. And so it's kind of like I'm going to call it a rigged game in quotes. But they would say, "Oh no, it's not a rigged game. These are viable candidates. That gal from Walmart who ran against you last time, she was a viable candidate. Yeah, she's a good clerk.
Oh my gosh,
she's been at the register. Yeah, she's been at the register for years. She's a loyal employee." Now, what I'm saying is, there are people who are running for the board of directors who have absolutely no qualifications, in my opinion, to be running for a board position at an electric cooperative. You would expect, maybe you and I would expect, and most of our listeners would expect, if not all of our listeners would expect, that you would have qualifications to run for the board. You would understand Ohm's law. You would understand how electricity works. You would understand business. And you would be a bona fide contributing member of the board to make good decisions. Well, that's not the case. Anybody who is a member in good standing, meaning you've paid your bill and you live in the, and you buy your electricity from the cooperative, can run for the board. Anybody. Mentally handicapped, lack of information, doesn't matter. You can run. And all you have to do is get 15 signatures.
Member of your favorite religious cult?
Well, that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up, because I had some prepared remarks, and I spent 3 weeks thinking about what I would say in my allotted 2 minutes. Well, I was running against the president of the board, and I believe the president of the board, so he gets a lot of play in the media, and he's got lots of friends, and I'm sure there are, I can't prove it, but I'm sure there are transactions that are favorable to people whom he knows, even though it's prohibited, right? But I'm pretty sure that that's kind of how it works. I can't prove it. I'm not accusing him. I'm just saying that's my opinion. Well, he, I believe, had run for somewhere around 6 terms, and I believe this would be his 7th term. And it was really, really difficult to unseat this guy because, well, when he got up on stage, he said, gave his name, and he said that what he does, he raises cows, which is what I do. And his wife is a teacher. From there. He's from here. Did I say he was from here? He's from here. He's from here.
How did I know he was going to say that?
And he goes to church. He goes to church here. The local 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th Baptist Church Assembly of God. The ones that are going to go to heaven. Those guys. He goes to that church, and his wife's a teacher. I know I said that before, but I'm trying to emphasize how important these things are. And she teaches elementary school children, and his children go to the elementary or to the school there in the county. And he's from here. Did I say he's from here? He's from here. And that's what it took. That is what it took to get him re-elected. Now, another gal who was running said that she has a BS degree, and she's a CPA. She had a job with an electric utility, but that's not the important part. The important part is she's been married for 45 years to her husband, who she just the apple of her eye. She loves him, and they had this. They live on the lake, and they have. That's where they had their honeymoon, and it was just a wonderful honeymoon. I'm telling you, this is the kind of stuff that went on for the 2 minutes that each of us was allotted to make our case for the board. And before the meeting, I talked to a couple of the high-ranking top management of the electric cooperative. And I said, how much time do I have? 2 minutes. I talked to the attorney for the cooperative. He said, you got about 2 minutes. I said, if you're going to hire a secretary or a shop foreman or a guy to maintain the lawn, the grounds at the cooperative, you're going to give them more than 2 minutes. We're talking about the highest level of executive decisions, the people who manage the highest level, the people who can hire and fire top management. That's what we're talking about. And you're talking about giving them 2 minutes. Whereas you would never do that for the secretary, the shop foreman, or the guy that you're going to have cut the lawn for the cooperative. Doesn't make sense, does it? And then he said, well, that's what we got. And I said, by the way, now he's the attorney. Now he's the guy that is going to be monitoring me and the others with, the equivalent of a mental stopwatch right next to me, to my left. So just a few feet away, who's going to bring the hook and hook me and bring me off stage, right? Say, Finelli, that's it. You spent up your time. That's it. No more. You're out of here, off the stage. You've used more than your allotted time. That's the guy we're talking about. So I wanted to make sure that he and I were on the same wavelength. And I said to him, so how do you feel about lawyer jokes? He said, well, if you think that's the best use of your time. And I let him know that if he gave me a hard time while I was making my above-board, honest case for my position, that I was going to turn to him and we're going to just have some lawyer jokes. I let him know that without saying it. And I was all prepared. I mean, I was all prepared to do this. I did not do this. I did not do the lawyer joke, but I was prepared for it. And I was also prepared to do something that I think is over the top. Now, imagine this. You're giving your presentation. You're at the podium. You're at the microphone. You're blinded by the lights. You're on camera. And I thought there were 3,000 people there. There are only 2,500. And he's standing there kind of watching every move I make. And this is after every member of our family, my wife, Mrs. Finelli, and our son and I were followed everywhere by a security detail to protect and make sure that we were safe. So they were watching us like hawks. And I wanted to, if this guy gave me a hard time, I'm talking about the attorney, I was going to turn to him as he approached me to tell me that I had, I was out of there, off the stage. I was prepared to tell him this. Sir, I can see you're kind of fidgeting, and you don't have to ask me for permission to use the men's room. It's right there. Go through those double doors and go, it's on the left. I was all prepared to do that. in my best Columbo, okay?
Well,
anyway, so I was unhampered by this attorney. So let me tell you what I said. I've got my notes in front of me, and I'll tell you what I said, and it did not work. It did not work. And this I saw ignorance of some people in full bloom. I kid you not. We'll talk more about this when we come back. Guineith and I are talking about my experience in running for the board of directors for the second time. And the reason that I'm going through this so slowly is to teach a class in what happens in the rural world. And I'd like to continue if it's okay with you, Guineith, and I'd probably take
Yep,
another
that's
15
fine.
minutes. Okay, all right.
Yep.
So here's some of my notes from what I said on Friday night on stage. And I believe that there were 3,000 people. That's what I was told, but there were 2,500 at the most. Okay, so here's what I said. Well, I'm pretty excited. I feel like I'm on a job interview with 3,000 decision makers. Did you see those yellow signs outside the main entrance? That's me. I'm Vincent Finelli, and I've been a teacher for 32 years and a farmer for 28 years. My family and I live in Wright County. Many of you are fortunate and were born here. I wasn't. But after thousands of miles behind the wheel of our truck, we found the best place in the United States to live. Right here. We love it. We love it here, and we don't want any changes, except for lower electric bills. Tonight, all eyes are on you. You are the most important people in this room. Big responsibilities rest heavily on your shoulders. Tonight, you will select 3 of us, 6. And tonight, you'll select which 3 of us 6 will stand in your place and protect your interests. At stake are the price of your electricity and the security of the power grid from an attack from our very own sun, 93 million miles away. In 1859, our sun burped and sent a solar flare hurling towards Earth, and it set fire to the telegraph system at many locations. Buildings burned, and people were killed. That event is known as the Carrington event. If you have a smartphone, you can look it up. Carrington event. Can it happen again? Yes. And it did within the last 12 months. Fortunately, the blast was sent in the opposite direction from Earth and went into outer space. Scientists believe that we can expect one every 75 years or so. The next time will pound us into the Stone Age. Imagine a world without electricity, with no hospitals, with no internet, no operational stores, and no cell phones. That's just for starters. I have 2 goals as your newest director. My first goal is to provide safe, reliable, and at the lowest cost electricity possible. I will not cease working to lower your electric bill. My second goal is to insulate our cooperative power from the rest of the damaged grid when the next Carrington event happens. We can lower our electric bills and simultaneously generate our own electricity. I know together we can build such a system. Instead of installing solar system storm surge protection equipment, your current board of directors spent about $5 million on new electric meters, which were absolutely unnecessary. And they are more susceptible to damage from a solar storm. The old meters, with more than 20 years of life left, were all crushed and replaced with the new meters that are expected to last about 10 years. Your board made that decision. Far less money could have been spent to protect our power grid from the next Carrington event. Your current board has raised our electric bills 7 times in 14 years. They need to be relieved of duty tonight. And you're in charge. The last time I was here sitting in the same seats that you're in, 2 ladies sitting next to me were discussing who to vote for. The conversation went something like this. Who's that guy that we always vote for? I can't remember his name. One pointed to the ballot and said, I think that's the guy that we always re-elect. You re-elected your own higher electric bills. Our founding fathers designed a system of government whereby a person would serve 1 term, then step aside and give someone else a chance. Someone with new ideas, new visions, and someone who will spend your money as if it were his own. I am that someone, Vincent Finelli. Remember, never re-elect anyone, including presidents, senators, congressmen, mayors, and directors, including me. What happens next is up to you. And that's what I said. So
I think that should have got you every vote in the room, but it didn't, did it?
Oh. No, you've got to be related. And I think you've got to be on the, I'll tell you what I believe when we come back. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we're spending time talking about the corruption in America. We're talking about what it's like to run as a person who really wants to represent the interests of the bottom 93%. Yeah. So what I did, I've experienced doing it twice, and I don't think I'm going to do it again. We'll talk more about that when we come back. And then we're going to talk about the cops. Guineith Isaacs with us live in Australia. I'm Vin Finelli. Everyone all set? Yeah. Cocked, locked, Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. I'm delighted to be with you. Guineith is with us, Guineith Isaacs, live in Australia. And I've been spending most of the time, the first hour, talking about my experience in running for the board of directors twice for our local electric cooperative. To cut to the chase, I was not successful. I placed second out of 3. And what was really surprising, Guineith, is the guy who placed third is from here. He's from here. So, but and he's the CEO of a small corporation, and he didn't make it either. But so these guys who are the current board of directors running for re-election, they are entrenched. So I sent an email to the CEO, and I had several questions. I sent a bunch of emails, and I talked to him on the phone. He wanted to make sure I knew the rules, a lot of rules. One of them was that you can campaign in the lobby. Now, this is a 46,000 square foot room, pretty big, and the same location where we had our Get Prepared Expo in Lebanon, Missouri. And there was plenty of security there to make sure that our family was safe. We had people following us around. Mrs. Finelli she was told that she could campaign outside, and she doesn't like doing that. And our son doesn't like doing that. But she was outside in the entryway, that led up to the entry doors to the building. And she walked inside. Now, she was not allowed to campaign inside. Neither was our son, who was with me. And she was stopped by a member of the security staff. This person really wasn't like a cop, but this person was assigned to watch our every move, I'm sure. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm darn sure that's the case. Friendly guy, and they picked a guy who wouldn't be hostile toward us to, let's not start a war with the Finelli family. So this guy stopped Mrs. Finelli when she walked inside the lobby, and he said, "You cannot campaign in here." She said, "I'm not campaigning. I'm going to the ladies' room." And she was. The last thing Mrs. Finelli wants to do is glad hand people and say hi to people. She doesn't like that. I think she's allergic to people, which is something that's happening to me. I'm starting to get allergic to people too. But so we had these signs outside, and I read what they were during the first hour. Now, the electric cooperative rented these golf carts. Now, these are not just regular golf carts where 2 people sit side by side or 3 squeezed together. No, these are like limousine golf carts where you could put a whole bunch of people on one and you'd have one driver. And they had a bunch of these golf carts going out to the parking lot and taking people from their cars to the front door. Now, we're talking 700 feet, maybe 800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet at the most.
People can't walk 800 feet in America these days. I suppose some of them can't.
Well, some could. I mean, I helped in '87.
I hope they've got a bench seat in the back of one of these things.
I believe they do, but there was an 87-year-old. There was an 87-year-old. There was an 87-year-old veteran of the Korean conflict, and he and I struck up a conversation. He said he was going to vote for me, and as he was telling me this, I wheeled him into the complex from the parking lot, and he appreciated the help, and I appreciated the fact that he is really pro-American. He's a patriot. Anyway, I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned. Now, I mentioned there were about 1,005 members who were there, plus maybe 1,500 guests, total 2,500 people. Now, everyone who wanted one got a little styrofoam box of things to eat, and in that was a hot dog on a bun. Now, this hot dog, I would say there were probably 8 of them to a pound. These are tiny hot dogs.
Wow.
You got a little plastic packet of mustard and a little plastic packet of relish. You got a cookie, one cookie, and a small bag of potato chips, and a drink. Now, you could have a Coke brand, Coca-Cola. You could have a can of Sprite. You could have a can of Diet Coke, or you could have a plastic bottle of water. And then if you wanted, you could have a small box of popcorn. I mean, the smallest box that you could have, that's what you were offered. And I think some people might have gotten, a couple hot dogs because they're really kind of tiny. So that was the food. Then they had a band, and my son was next to me, and he said the most amazing thing. My son he's very direct, and he doesn't mince words, but he's polite. And he was dressed in his blue jeans and a nice shirt. I mean, he was dressed, better than a lot of people there. And he turned to me, and the band was playing on and on and on. There was this screeching and this hooting and this boom, 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 boom. Those are the words that came across the speakers. Boom, boom, boom. Literally, for like 3 minutes. Those were the entire words of one of the songs. Mm-hmm. It was a song with vocals, but just grunting. And my son turned to me, and it was horrible. In my opinion, it was horrible. Now, some people were clapping, which kind of shows you the level of maturity and intelligence. And my son said to me, "Geez, Dad, I can't believe it. Of all the jeans I could have picked, these are the ones without earplugs." Now it's actually true, because as a farmer, he's used to hopping in the tractor, putting it's like earplugs that have a cord that you wear around your back of your neck.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he's always got earplugs with him, for chainsaws and the backhoe and, whatever he happens to be doing that's noisy. He wears earplugs and safety glasses. So he has them with him all the time. And he remarked that of all the jeans he had, these didn't have earplugs. And he was serious. And it was just, the music was horrible. And I'm not trying to bash these guys. It was just, I would have liked any other band. Actually, we don't need a band. And I'll tell you why we don't need a band. Now, there were 1,005 members. That's what was reported. So this event really was for the 1,005 members, but they were allowed to bring guests. So, and I did. I brought my wife, and I brought my son. So I brought 2 guests. Some people didn't bring any guests. The lady that we adopted next to us, she was in her 90s. She didn't bring any guests, so we were with her all night. Bottom line was, what do you think an event like this would cost? Now, they had some advertising expense. I have no idea how much. Everybody got, the hot dog, cookie, soda, water, 2 light bulbs, a digital, and I'm talking about a real cheap digital thermometer, and a nightlight with 1 little tiny LED. That's pretty much what everybody got. Oh, then they had some prizes. They gave away a TV, and they said, "Hey, anybody here married over 60 years? Great, raise your hand." And then they gave them, because the cooperative had been in business for 79 years, they gave them a $79 credit on their electric bill. They gave away a few $100 gift certificates to the Chinese factory outlet. They gave away, some other prizes in the $20 neighborhood. So that's what they did. Now, how much do you think that event cost? Because I asked. I was curious. What do you think that cost?
I would say in the ballpark of $50,000.
Wow. Corruption at its finest.
Just a guess. That would make it around about $50 per head.
Yes, you are right. $65,400.
Wow.
Now, I asked some people that were coming in, I greeted them and said hello and that kind of thing, and I asked them what they thought this event would cost. And I got numbers like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Nobody said $65,000. So this extravaganza, carnival, circus, whatever you want to call it, and I would call it all 3. $65,000.
My husband did own a nightclub at one stage before I met him, and he did events management from time to time. Once again, not while I was with him, but it must have come through in the DNA or something, because it's just that's how you calculate it. You calculate it per head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why they sell tickets for these sorts of events. If you wanted to attend this sort of event, you would probably be paying between $80 and $100 for a ticket, and that's the reason why they've got to make their money. It costs about that much to put it on, and I would say that the $65,000 was a little bit over the top, but not that much over the top for an event of that scale.
Well, I think that
they could have made the hot dogs a bit bigger.
I had 7 events. 3 of them were in this very same facility.
Yeah.
And I charged between $5 and $8 a head.
Wow.
At the door. Anybody who wanted to come in for free just had to say, listen, I can't afford the $5 or $8. We let them in. I invited all teachers and their families to be our guests. I would pay for their tickets for free. I think we might have had, well, less than 10. Less than 10 took us up on it. We paid for television advertising, which was really, really, really expensive. I mean, $950 for a 30-second commercial.
Yep.
So
and how much did your event cost you?
Well, I could do easily 3 events in the same location with television, radio advertising. I'm talking excluding me talking about it on the air. I'm talking about newspaper advertising, television advertising, radio stations, local but not part of USA Prepares. I could do 3 events for the same amount of money.
Yep, I was going to say that.
Yeah, with 84 seminars. Yep, and people from
and a bit bigger hot dogs.
Oh, absolutely. And a way better event. And not for one evening, for 2.5 days. We'll be right back. Guineith, when you were mentioning that your husband, would host events like that, he had to pay employees to be at their posts. And I did too. However, the electric cooperative with their, I'm guessing, 50 employees that were there, maybe there were more, they were not compensated as part of this $65,400 equation. They were just employees who were going to be at the event. So you got to strip out that. So that's a huge amount of money because I compensated everyone who helped us. And so did your husband.
Right. And you might get, for a day's work or a night's work like that, you might get $200 or $300.
That's right. And let me talk about the signs. And this was really interesting. I was told by the CEO that I could have signs, on the campus. However, they needed to be a minimum of 50 feet away from the door, or no closer than 50 feet from the entry door. And they couldn't block, traffic. So I had been there, and many, many times to this convention center in Lebanon. And I asked our son. I had the signs made, and my son was kind enough to make these little platforms out of wood, so that the signs would not need to be stuck into the ground. They would just be placed on the wide sidewalk, which is like 50 or 100 feet wide. And they would stand about 18 inches off the sidewalk. And they were 18 by 24 inches. And they were spaced at 25 feet apart, maybe 30 feet apart. So I suggested to my son, who was going to put these signs up before I got there, he was going to go at 3:30 in the afternoon, and the event started at 5 p.m. I suggested to him that he bring some white chalk, like you'd use on a blackboard 30, 40 years ago, which we have. And I asked him to bring some with him and take a tape measure and measure 50 feet from the door and put a small line, a couple inches long, in white chalk on the sidewalk. And then a foot from that, a foot farther away from the door, put an X and put the first sign on that. And then put an X under each sign base that we were going to position. And the reason I did that, I'm a preparedness guy, and my minimum, I want to minimize my maximum regret. And my maximum regret would be somebody would move our signs, and I'd get blamed for it. Okay, Finelli's trying to cheat.
Yeah.
Well, so the X was to mark where we put the signs. So if they got moved and the cops showed up,
you would have evidence.
I'd say, yeah, well, they were right here. See the X? and the X, and the X, and the X, and the X. See them? That's all right. Well, they weren't moved. They had the police with a police car at the front door. They're right near the front entrance, I should say.
Probably because you put the X's there.
and here's what
worked it out.
Here's what happened. My son said, "Hey, Dad, within 15 minutes of me putting the signs out there, they came out with this like 150-foot tape measure, and they measured from the front door." And so our son, went right over to say hi to him. And my son said, it's going to be 50 feet. You're going to find that it's 50 feet to this line. And the guy said, 50 feet on the money. He said, yeah. And the sign is a foot farther away from that, 51. He goes, all right. We just want to make sure, it's fair for everybody. We've got to make sure it's fair. Now, we were the only ones who had signs. No one else bothered to have any signs this year. So I wanted to share with you that they were watching us like a hawk, and I am not kidding.
They do that.
Now, the next thing I wanted to share with you is there are 9 board members, and so naturally I want to know the attendance. So how many meetings do these guys go to? So I sent an email to the CEO, and he said they don't take attendance. But he'd like us to make most of the meetings, the directors. Okay, so there are 12 meetings a year, and I said, so how much, and this is in writing form, so I've got a copy of it, how much is the total compensation with perks, everything? Whatever they spend on the board, how much per year? $188,000. 9 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good work if you can get it, right?
12 meetings.
Yeah, plus, if they want to go to extra training and actually learn a little bit about what they're supposed to be doing, they can be compensated for the training as well. But the total compensation, $188,000.
$15,000 between the 9 members.
21.
Per meeting.
21,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but you got to spend like a half a day,
$2,000 for half a day's work is not bad.
That's what I thought. Now, I didn't find this out. Until 2 days before. So, Guineith, when I first ran for the board of directors, I was absolutely frosted about the smart meters. I knew that they replaced 5 million of them. They crushed the old ones that were perfectly good, and they gave no one a choice. As a matter of fact, I didn't say it at the board meeting, but if I ever have a whim to do this again, which I don't think so, I would say, so this guy showed up at the farm, and he had a pickup truck, and I didn't recognize it, and I didn't recognize him, so I went outside, and I greeted him, and I said, hey, how can I help you?
What are you
doing? I'm going to replace your meter. And I said, well, no, I'm okay with the meter I've got. He goes, no, I'm going to replace your meter. And I said, no, I want my old one. I want to keep my old one. Look, pal, if you stand in my way, I'm going to call the sheriff and have you arrested. Now, who makes those decisions and under what authority? Well, that's under the direction of the existing board of directors, the same people that I was running against. So when I said that I didn't know how much there was compensation was for these directors. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even concerned about compensation. What I wanted those smart meters out of here, okay? And I wanted lower electric rates. Those were my 2 goals. I was not interested in obtaining a job. Now, it would be fun to have, an extra $21,000 a year. That'd be kind of nice. It'd be a real help around the farm, and maybe I could, get some more things that I need. It wouldn't change my lifestyle. I wouldn't be going buy a new car, a new tractor, or anything. I might just get, some replacement parts a little sooner. Okay, and so I wasn't doing this for money. Well, actually, in one respect, I was. I wanted a lower electric bill. That's the money I was interested in. And now the other candidates who were speaking were saying things like, and now these are not their words, but I'm paraphrasing and I'm showing the intent. I want to get along with everybody, and I want to work well with everybody. You guys work so hard, and it's a dangerous business. And I want to have safe electricity. I want to make sure you have all the tools you need, and that's what I want to do, and affordable electric rates. And I'm saying, yeah, we can do all that, and we can stop wasting money, and we can have lower electric rates. And the other candidates were indicating they wanted to work with the other members and that kind of thing. And I said, I think the entire board should be relieved of duty tonight. So I wasn't playing nice, according to their terms. I wanted the entire board to be gone. And so at the end of the meeting, they said, let's talk about new business. Does anybody have any new business? And one guy suggested one thing, and I started to get up, and Mrs. Finelli said, I don't think you should do this. I said, no, I'm going to do this. So I stood up, raised my hand, and no one paid attention to me. So, I said, I've got some new business. So I walked over to the center, below the stage, in the center below, center of the room, right below the lawyer with the microphone. And he looked at me. And I couldn't speak loud enough for everybody to hear me, so somebody came up to me with a microphone. And I said, I propose that we have term limits for the board of directors.
Wonderful.
As a matter of fact, one term. That's it. One term.
Yep.
And he looked at me. He didn't know what to say.
They didn't even vote on it.
No, they didn't. They did not. And here's what he said. He said, well, that is for the board of directors to take up. So the board is going to vote for term limits? Now, I'm going to use the words, and I'm going to put them in quotes.
Not after 18 years, they won't.
One board member has been on there 45. 40, wow. That's 2.5 generations. Okay.
That's amazing.
Absolutely amazing. And I'm going to talk about statistics and how you can say the same thing two different ways in just a second. But the board determines who the nomination committee is to replace them. The board determines the terms. So I don't think there's going to be term limits, and I don't think there's going to be changes to the nominating committee. And I asked the CEO, had anyone ever been successful being nominated for the membership, which I was, okay? There were, maybe 20 to 30 people who thought I would be a viable candidate that they'd like to see on the board, okay? Compared to the 6 people in the 3 nominating committees, total of 6 people. So I had more people wanting me than all the nominating committees combined. But the CEO said, no one has ever been successful being a petition candidate or a candidate nominated through petition, which I was. No one in 79 years has ever been successful, including me. And I was not successful either. So I wanted to share some of this with our class. So what does it take? It takes bribes to get people to show up, light bulbs and umbrellas and hot dogs and, at $65 a head, per member. That's what it takes to get people to show up. Awful music. And this is like a free night out. These people think it's a free night out. I want to talk about one other thing before we talk about the cops. Now, I studied finance and economics for 6 years. And I've talked to some other people who have studied finance and economics. And I said, have you ever heard the term patron capital? Patron, P-A-T-R-O-N, capital. Nobody has. None of the instructors I've talked to have ever heard of it. Now, I'm talking about people who are on boards, okay? These are really bright people. I'm talking about people in the medical field. I'm talking about doctors who are CEOs of their own business. They've never heard of this. And
is that people who donate to support your work?
Well, very, very close, except almost at the muzzle of a gun. Now, okay, now an electric cooperative, you have a choice. If you want electricity, you either buy it from them, you steal it from them, or you generate your own. Now, I'm not advocating stealing it, hooking in, tapping into to electric lines. I'm not advocating that, and I don't support that at all. So there's only 2 ways you can get electricity. One is to buy it from the cooperative if you live in our neck of the woods. You have no alternative source. You can't buy it from another electric company. You can only buy it from the electric cooperative. And you pay their rates, or you generate it yourself. Well, when they determine the rates, they overestimate what it's going to cost. So what they say is, let's say we need 100 units of money. We'll charge 110 or 105. And we'll use that extra 5 or 10 units above and beyond to pay, and we'll put it in an account. And we'll use it for emergencies and other things. So they overcharge. Now, an electric cooperative is a not-for-profit organization. They're supposed to return to the members any overpayments. But they call this one item patron capital. That's money that's been overcharged that they keep in an account and use it at their discretion for emergencies or whatever they want. And so they mentioned this, and it's in the millions. I'm not talking 1, 2, 5. I'm talking like well over 20 million. They keep it, and they tell the members, this is so that we don't have to borrow money and pay interest. This is money that is taken from the members, kept, and the members are clapping. That's great. We don't have to pay interest. It's unbelievable, the depth of ignorance of some people. One guy, I met him.
Their personal private slush fund. That's what we would call it in this country. A pork barrel or a slush fund.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, which means I am agreeing with you. Now, one guy, I met him. He was a senior citizen, and he was wearing a nice suit. And I greeted him as he was entering the registration room. And he said, he was kind of terse, and he was kind of turning away from me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to make eye contact with him, and I wanted to find out what this guy's all up to. And he said, did you bring your bullet with you this time? And I said, you mean the cartridge? He said, yeah, what was that? And I said, it was a 5.56. It's like a 223. And he said, that's idiotic. Now, what he was referring to is the last time I was on stage 3 years ago, I took out of my sport coat pocket a 5.56 cartridge that you might use in an AR-15. And I held it between my thumb and forefinger, and I said, well, I paid about 20 cents for this. Now, one of these could be shot from a couple hundred yards away, and if it were placed right at a substation and it hit the right area, it could cause a transformer to melt down. And there are no replacements. There's no spares. You can't go to the transformer warehouse and pick up another one. These are all custom designed. And it takes 2 years to get one. Now, I think we should protect. I said, I'm not going to tell you how to do it.
There's no backup.
Right, no backup. No spares. And I said that I verified this with an engineer from the electric cooperative before I went on stage. I took it out of my pocket and I said, can this do this? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I said to the guy, I said, I verified this. And he said, it's idiotic. And I said, well, I can't help it that you don't understand. Now, who was this guy? This guy was the husband. I found out later on that evening, Friday evening, that he's the husband of the gal who ran and won re-election. So here we have a guy who acts like he knows what's going on, who doesn't know what's going on, and his wife has been re-elected for the board. I'm telling you, the upshot of all of what I've said for the last hour and 45 minutes is that we are doomed, and it is us. We are our own enemy. We are as dumb as a box of rocks. I'm not talking about our class. I'm saying that 0.1% or 1 in 1,000 people understands what we're talking about. The rest have no clue. I even met a couple of gals who were in a doctor's office on staff in their 30s, let's say, and I asked them if they knew their cell phone could be turned on remotely. Really? It can? Really? I can't believe how ignorant. I'm not saying they're not smart. I'm just saying they don't know the facts. They have no idea. And I've asked people, at the election, do you listen to the radio? No. Okay. Do you listen to the radio? No. Do you listen to the radio? No. They don't listen to the radio. They don't read the internet. They don't read books. I know this for a fact because I've been asking people for 12 years. Do you read books? Do you read the internet? Where do you get your news from? Oh, I get it. I pay attention to the news.
CNN?
Yeah. Yeah, and Fox.
They tell the truth.
CNN and Fox. That's where I get it. So they are convinced. I'm not kidding.
Ronaldo in the Middle East and babies and incubators.
They are convinced that they are on top of their game because they know what sanitized news tells them. Guineith, you've probably heard the term liars figure and figures lie, or something like that. There are many variants of that. Well, I just want to say one more thing. I have a graph that was sent to me by the CEO of the electric cooperative, and I'm looking at this graph, and it says from 1992 through 2002, there were no rate increases, not one. Not one. Absolutely flat electric bills. Okay. Now, from 2004 to 2017, there were that 14 years. There were 7 increases. So previously, for 10 years, there were no increases, and in 2004 to 2017, there were 7 rate increases, which is way over 30%, 36%, way more than that in 7 years. I'm sorry, in 14 years. So I got up and I said, these guys, these directors, the existing directors, have increased your electric rates 7 times in 14 years. Now, after I was up there, the president of the board of directors gets up and he says, now we've only increased electric rates 7 times in 25 years. He's looking at the same graph. Now, both of those things are correct.
Yeah.
But what he chose to do...
He's not telling the whole truth.
That's correct. He's misleading the entire membership. It's absolutely true, but he's misleading. He's trying to say that, work of other boards members for 10 years did not increase electric rates, but he's trying to minimize the damage. And he did that because he knew because the CEO told him that I asked for the rates for the last 50 years. I wanted to see it, and they couldn't give it to me. They could only give it to me from 1980. So bottom line is the residential cost was below, in 1980, was below $40. Okay?
Wow.
And now it's, no, per month. Per month. $40 per month. And now it's well over 100, well over. But it's, I shouldn't say it that way. What I'm saying is, our electric rates have gone up substantially, and they don't need to. And I wanted to tell our membership that, people are saying, yeah, everything's going up, and they mentioned everything's going up. Everything's not going up, because gasoline was about $4 a gallon here. A bunch of years ago, maybe 6 years ago, $4 a gallon. Diesel was about the same price. Now diesel and gasoline are about $2 a gallon. Well, between $2 and $2.30. Okay, right. So I wanted to share that with our class today. Gwyneth, you want to talk about the cops? We only have a couple minutes.
I realise I've only got a few minutes left. Okay. Now, what I wanted to say is this: the blue team seems to have this idea that if they cooperate with whoever's giving the orders, which in this country seems to be a bunch of fascists, and lately they seem to be taking their orders from the what I call the black team, which is the Muslims. They can seem to do no wrong. They seem to get the idea that if they persecute the rest of us, that they're going to get a place at the table. But both the Muslims and the communists operate according to a playbook. It's an ancient one, and it works, okay? And this is how it is. You get the local enforcement team to do your bidding, oppress the people and enslave them, and get you into a position of power, okay? And then when you are in that position of power, guess who? I'm talking about the Islamo-fascist people, okay? The banksters, the communists who seem to be running the show, okay? The first people that they get rid of when they fully gain power is, guess who? Local law enforcement. They don't have to be worried about us. The ones that they have to be worried about are the people who are giving them orders, because they will be retained only as long as they are perceived to be useful and not a liability. And that's what goes.
Yeah, and that's what I've been mentioning to cops. You guys think that you're going to be protected?
We're not the
no.
problem.
Yeah.
We'll
Gwyneth, thank you so much.
Survive.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us.